Hello, my name's Dave Schuyler. I was raised on the Oneida Reservation. I was born in Chicago in 1966, October 7th. I'm the second oldest of 6 kids. I have one older sister, and I have 2 younger brothers and 2 younger sisters, one older sister. You know, what I want to talk about is my drinking and where it started, and why it started maybe. Since childhood, growing up as an illegitimate son and in a family, I guess you could say the scapegoat. I've experienced just about every kind of abuses that you could think of, from the sexual and physical, emotional and mental abuses. And a lot of these things destroyed my self-worth, I was being raised on a reservation, half white, I had problems with my identity. Going to school, being half native, in a white school, public school, I had problems with my identity. And at home, being the white sheep in the family, and my dad being my stepdad, and my brothers and sisters being native, and my being half Irish, it was like identity issues there too, And I just didn't know where I fit in, and because of the physical and emotional abuse that I was going through too, I really started hating life and hating who I was, and I didn't feel good about myself. I felt ugly. And then when we talk about being Native American also, and being oppressed for so many years, when you go out into a public school, and the way you view yourself, you see all these higher class or middle class white kids that come from good homes and dressed real nice, and here we are poor and struggling, and it really affects the way you view yourself too, and my whole life basically I found a hard time finding out where I belonged and if I belonged. I like to tell people and share with people in recovery, that I've basically been suicidal since the age of 5 until 38, and I used to pray for death. The first time I remember praying for death was after a beating I got when I was 5 years old, and I was crawling up the steps and I prayed for death, and I didn't want to be alive. And I look back at all these things, and not feeling good enough, not feeling wanted, not feeling loved, and having all these abandonment issues. And when I turned 14, my parents got divorced. And I was already in and out of trouble with school, institutions. My parents were had me institutionalized and find out what my problem was. Later on in years, I had to go back and I had to understand what my parents been through in their life. What did they go through? That had me experience certain things I had to go through. Life was hard, and I viewed myself a victim my whole life. Poor me, poor me, poor me. My mom and dad didn't love me enough. They didn't want me, and I wasn't really liked in the community because I was the ugly white kid. I wasn't liked in the school because I was Native, and it was like, I just felt really ugly about myself. At the age of 14, I started, my parents divorced, and I started hanging out with some of my cousins, and that's when I started drinking. And I fell in love with it because I felt like I felt closer to them. I felt like I was a part of something. So I drank, I started drinking, and I found out that the drinking helped me deal with a lot of maybe my traumatic experiences I had in the past and the way I viewed myself. Well, it took all that away for the time being. But later on, as I continued drinking, it became, it really began getting out of control. And I was in and out of jail from the age of 16. I remember I became very violent, and I started telling myself crazy things about, I was tired of people hurting me. I was tired of being hurt, and that I was going to be the person doing the hurting from now on. If anybody ever stepped to me and came to me, I was going to be crazy enough to just go right through them or over them. From the age of 14, 15, and 16, my behavior started getting reckless. I remember my dad used to beat me when I was growing up as a kid. And at the age of 14, standing in the kitchen, my dad stood there with his fist up in my, like he was going to punch me. And I looked at him and I said, "You better kill me." And he said, "What do you mean by that?" And I said, "I mean, you better kill me because that's the last time you're going to put your hands on me." And he walked away, and I knew then that he no longer had control of me. And if my dad was my biggest source of fear. And when I found the courage to stand up to him and realize that he just walked away, I knew that nobody can control me anymore, and they didn't. And I took a huge responsibility for my life at that point, and started living reckless. I remember standing in the kitchen and my dad telling me once, he said, you know, you scare me. He said, you scare me, I'm afraid to go to sleep. And I said, he said, I'm afraid that you're going to come in my room and you're going to cut my throat. And I said, don't make me out to sound like some crazy nut. You know, this is how you created me. This is what you wanted. You wanted me to be the oldest boy. You wanted me to be the tough guy. You wanted me to be the guy that was going to take care of and protect everybody. I said, and now you're telling me that you're afraid of what you created. You know, and this, I'm not sharing this to, you know, to make my dad look bad, because my dad grew up, he had a rough life. And, you know, and I had to understand his life to understand what I went through. And today we have a really great relationship, so I want to make that perfectly clear. You know, I love my dad dearly and he loves me dearly. But I never thought there would be a time that he and I would ever have that kind of a relationship. You know, I'm gonna kind of jump up ahead a little bit, you know, because that's a little bit about my childhood and where my drinking started. My drinking got bad though, and throughout the course of my life, like a lot of other people's addictions, they get bad, and they, as you carry on and get further into them, you know. And I've been in 9 car accidents. The last one I almost died, and I remember getting loaded into the ambulance. The only thing I remember, the paramedic lifted me into the ambulance. I remember them lift me in, and I just remember hearing a voice saying, we're losing them, don't leave us, Dave. You know, and that was it. And then next thing I know, I woke up in ICU, my family standing around. And it was at that moment, you know, what had happened, I had passed out going through an intersection at 172 on Packerland, and I rear-ended 3 people, and 3 people got injured. Not bad, but they went in the hospital and they were released after being checked out. But it was enough that made me stop and think, you know, I could have killed 3 people. I could have killed myself. I could have took myself out of my son's life. I could have took myself, you know, I could have took 3 people out of their family's life. What gives me that kind of right? And I started thinking about that, you know. You know, and one thing I'd like to share with people, you know, is you don't have to be an alcoholic to devastate somebody's life with alcohol. You know, it just takes one bad night out. I share that with people a lot, you know. I had realized at that point when I sat in my apartment and I said, God help me, I don't want to live like this anymore, that I didn't have the power to quit by myself. Somewhere along the line, I lost that power to just stop drinking. And that's when I started going to, you know, AA. I had to go to outpatient treatment, but I remember getting kicked out of outpatient. At that point, I was going to just go ahead and drink. I thought, you know what, they don't care, neither do I. I might as well just go ahead and drink. You know, they're going to kick me out. If I can't even, they don't even want me in an outpatient program, I might as well go back and drink, you know, feeling sorry for myself. And I remember grabbing the keys and walking to the door, and I was going to go to the liquor store, and then I stopped when I grabbed the door, and I thought, if I go to the liquor store and I drink now, then who am I really quitting for? You know, am I quitting for everybody else? Am I quitting for my son? Or am I really quitting for myself? And I was like, I'm quitting for myself this time, you know. I'm quitting for myself. I'm not going to do this. Put my keys back down. And I remember walking alongside the bed. I'm like, well, what do I do? What do I do? And I seen this piece of paper. I call this divine intervention. I seen this piece of paper laying outside the bed. And I looked and I grabbed it from underneath my bed. I said, what is this? And it was an AA meeting list. And I was like, oh, wow. Well, hey, you know, hey, there's a meeting in a half an hour from now, you know. And that's where it began, you know. I was like probably 13 days shy of a year and a half sober. I was 2 days shy of that, and I relapsed. I got so full of myself, so angry. You know, because anger and pity are 2 things that'll take you out quick. That'll take you back out there fast. You don't have to test that theory. There's enough of us that did, you know. It takes you out there. It'll take you out there quick. So I had to get out of the self-pity and view myself as a victim in order to make changes. And I got back in AA right away after my relapse. And then I started getting into Native American ceremonies. Shortly as soon as I was kind of dabbling, you know. I dabbled in Native American ceremonies since 1989, and I've been doing ceremonies since 1989, Sweat Lodge. And then I remember going into prison because I was intoxicated one night and 4 guys beat my sister up, and I almost killed one of them. I ended up having to go to prison for a little while, and I continued with ceremonies in there. That was probably the beginning of my journey, taking a look at my life, saying, where did I stop valuing life? Where did I stop valuing my life and other people's lives? Because I didn't. When I went into prison, I can honestly say at that time, I didn't care about my life. I had a death wish, and it didn't even faze me that I was going to prison. I could have went to prison for life at that particular time, and it wouldn't have fazed me. You know, just the way I thought. You know, okay, I almost killed a guy. Okay, but, you know, I got to be looking at about 25 years, life sentence. Okay, I could be looking at a life sentence if this guy don't live. And my attitude at the time was, well, big deal. My life was over a long time ago. You know, and to finally, you know, at some point in prison laying there and saying, you know, oh man, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my life? And here I am, you know, I'm jumping back up ahead. You know, I'm in recovery. I'm getting into ceremonies, and then I start sundancing, you know. And when I started sundancing, just before I started sundancing, I picked up the sacred pipe and I became a pipe carrier. And I went on my Hamblecha, I went on a vision quest. I went to South Dakota where I sundanced for 5 years. I met my ex-wife out there. We got into a long distance relationship for like 4 years. And in my 5th year of sundancing, she moved out here. But what I did was I got involved with a motorcycle organization called ARM, Association of Recovering Motorcyclists, which is an awesome organization. It's just that, you know, I got away from the ceremonies. I got away from the spiritual aspect of recovery. And one of the things I had to do, being with this organization, one of the responsibilities I had was I had to kind of be the representative from our organization going into an outlaw world, where I went into this outlaw world and I was drawn to the ego, the power, and I walked away from my sacred pipe and ceremonies and away from ARM to become an outlaw motorcyclist and to become an outlaw biker. Shortly after becoming an outlaw biker, I became a vice president of an outlaw motorcycle club, and that took me. That was probably a couple years. I stayed sober through this whole. You know, I stayed clean and sober through this whole stint, this whole experience with the outlaw world, and I ended up leaving, talking to this Lakota woman who said, you know, you were called to carry medicine, and you know, this is supposed to be your path. And I was like, I was so caught up in the ego and stuff, and then, you know, I ended up leaving the motorcycle world, and that's another story though. There's a big story. There's a prayer I said to the Creator, and as soon as I said it, boom, it happened just like that. I got a call, boom, I had to go meet with the president, and I was out of the club. Because I got more or less told the Creator, you know, if you want me to leave this outlaw motorcycle world, you're going to have to make it happen, because I ain't quitting the club. And right after I got done saying that, I got contacted, and I was like, wow. And then I had to go over to the clubhouse, and I was like, wow, I'm out of the club. And I was like, that was quick. And this has been my path ever since. You know, I got at the club. I thought, man, you know, what's the first thing I got to change about myself? Well, I got to change my ego. You know, I had a lot of ego. And so I was like, oh, okay. I found that once I left the motorcycle club, a guy had an ego. The opposite of ego is humility. You know, I started understanding what humility was. And once I left, all of these influential people in this circle, I had thousands of people, from Mongols to Banditos to pagans to you name it, from all over the country, were friends on my Facebook. They all went bye-bye. It's like the Creator just removed everybody, and I started over. And now my Facebook is mostly just family and friends. You know, I think I have maybe one OL on there, and we don't ever really talk, but he's on there, and you know, and that's all right. You know. Today I understand that all my experiences and everything that I've had experienced in my life have happened for a reason, to bring me to where I'm at today. You know, even from childhood. You know, that's the way I look at it. I had to change my perception. You know, I would tell people that in recovery I was, and in my life, you know, I was the king of self-pity. You know, I felt sorry for myself. You know, man, my dad beat me. Man, I was sexually abused as a child, and I went through this physical and emotional abuses, and I felt horrible about myself, to turn in my life around, learn how to love and care about myself. And then now I hold this, I carry this sacred pipe, and when I go to pray, I stand before the Creator and I say, Takashla Wonka Tonka, I will never stand before you a victim, nor will I ever feel sorry for anything I've ever had to experience in my life. I know everything was for a reason, and behind everything I've viewed negative, there's a positive. And my responsibility was to change the way I seen the world and change my perception to see that positive, to find that positive, and not only find it, but to apply what I've learned from it to my life and help share that with other people to better their lives, And I think that's one of the biggest things that I try to do today, is I try to remember that when working with people, or even in helping people and assisting people, that everything that I've experienced and is really to help better other people's lives. And I had to experience it because I was strong enough to. I walked through so much pain because the Creator knew that I could carry that burden, and I could turn that around. I could flip it, and I could flip it into a positive. I sat with a young lady once who was sexually abused, and she said, well, tell me how you find a positive in something like that. And I said, you're going to heal from it, and I'll help you if you want. I'll wipe you down, I'll smudge you, we'll pray. We'll help you, you heal from that. And then one day some young girl is going to sit across from you, and she's going to be lost and broken. And you're going to understand what it took you to heal yourself, to be able to heal her. And then you're going to find the gift in it. And you're going to say, you know what? You watch this young lady's life transform. You watch her smile again. And you watch her life get better. And you realize that you're sharing your story with her. And your strength has helped her find her own strength and find herself and her own identity without what was put on her. And that's where we start helping in the world of recovery. For people who are out and lost in addictions, I'd like to say, whether it's heroin, and different opiates, I'm nobody to judge you, and nobody is anyone to judge you. Your life is valuable, more valuable than you're giving yourself credit, And a lot of us are just lost and broken, and we're hurt. All of us. We shared that same story. I'm just a common man. There's nothing spectacular about me other than the fact that, one day I was tired. I was really tired, and I was tired of living the way I was living. And I didn't want to live that way no more, and I decided, I don't want my son to see me, because I prided myself that my son at the time was 9 years old. I remember looking back. He was 9 years old, and I prided myself when I got my last car accident, and I prided myself on him never seeing me with a drink in my hand. My son's never seen me drunk, Yeah, but my drinking affected him. And I realized that when I got out of the hospital, out of ICU, and I went to go see him. And he came right up to me and he wrapped his arms around my waist and cried and said, Daddy, I was worried about you. Even today it's emotional thinking about I think thinking about the things we do to our loved ones. I've said things and I've left images in my family's minds, that I could probably never take away. But the best amends that I could make to them was never let them see that side of me again. Now, I take a look at my life from the beginning into where I'm at now, from what I viewed as mistakes, walking away from my bundle and getting on with an outlaw motorcycle club, to leave an outlaw motorcycle club and getting back with my bundle and going back to South Dakota to meet up with a guy that I used to Sundance with, and he's a 40-year Sundancer. He's a Vietnam vet. He was a Green Beret in Vietnam. And I went and I found him. I located him after losing contact with him for 8 years. I found him on a Rosebud reservation, and I knocked on his door at night, 9 o'clock at night, and went and sat in with him, and I talked with him. And his name is Dan Foster, and I went and I talked with him, and I said, I know he wouldn't mind me using his name. He's a psychologist. He does a lot of work with Native American communities, and like I said, he's a 40-year Sundancer, and he told me, he says, Dave, we're all physical beings on a spiritual journey, and what you viewed as mistakes aren't mistakes. All we have are experiences and what we learn from them. And so even this chapter of your life that is now closed, it served a purpose, And I understand it today. Everything that the Creator has had me go through, that I've had to experience, is to prepare me to where I'm at today, to be able to reach all levels of different people. And I like to share with people and tell people, I've walked with saints, I've dined with serpents. I've had to spend time in dark places in order to appreciate the light. So anybody that's going to watch this video that I'm doing, anybody who's lost and stuck in addiction and feels too ashamed or embarrassed to face the world or themselves, you got to start somewhere. We all did. I had to start somewhere. You're worth it. And there's so many people in our community now that have great recovery, great experiences, that are willing to help you walk away from that kind of lifestyle and find something new, because God did intend you to help other people. You just got to find the strength right now and courage to help yourself.